I'm Beverly, and I'm on the witness stand. Hello, everybody. We are here to recap week of June 2nd through the 6th. Let's see, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Yep, June 2nd through June 6th of both the Karen Reed trial and also the Sean Little Bitty Diddy. So here, I want to start out by saying or showing respect to those veterans who are living, who have served, who are currently serving, and those that gave the ultimate sacrifice. Yesterday was the Remembrance Day for D-Day, and I want to shout that out as we are a family of veterans. We are very thankful to you, and we are very proud of you. Let's jump right into the Karen Reed trial. It was a very short court week. We only did 3.5 days of testimony, but we were not bored, at least in most of it. So the first thing that happened, which was comic relief, I really enjoyed this testimony because it was about Michael Proctor's friend who testified, which was funny to me, and then Officer Kelly Deaver. The reason I laugh about that is it'll come into play in just a second. Okay, so first of all, Michael Proctor's friend, what his name is, it doesn't really matter to me, but he's like I don't know if a lifelong friend, but one through, years of school, that kind of thing. And there apparently is a big text group, a text chain, I guess, of friends from school, college, around the neighborhood, just friends in one way or the other, but there's a bunch of them on it. And so you might have remembered that Michael Proctor texted some really nasty stuff about Karen Reed, and we condemn that completely because I've said before that he's a total nasty man for what he said and what he did. Anyway, okay, so this friend gets up. Now remember, Michael Proctor has said all this stuff, but his friend gets up and testifies, and the testimony really surrounds those text messages. So the prosecution has him read the text messages, and he reads everything until he gets to the really nasty part. And I understand that you don't want to say, I don't want to say the words here. It's not that I wouldn't, but you don't want to. But anyway, so he says, I'm not comfortable with reading this out loud. And so they do a sidebar and comes back and the prosecution says, okay, I'll read it for you. And you just confirm that's what's on the paper or what was in the text. And so the prosecution just reads these things out, and it's hysterical. To me, it's hysterical. Not that Proctor said it. That's a whole different thing. But that this guy was too embarrassed to read this stuff. Now, I have to say, you've been buddies with him for years, and you said on the stand that you continue to be buddies with him. You wussed out, buddy. This is so ridiculous that you claim to be friends with him from years back all the way up to a continued friendship. That's it. If that kind of remarks or comments make you uncomfortable, then get off the text frame. Then get off the text chain. How difficult can this be? How can I be so much smarter than everybody who gets on a witness stand? And most attorneys. Anyway, I digress. So I think that the defense came out and said he was quite biased towards Proctor. And I think that it just didn't even need to be said. I think we all know that. He's very biased, but does it prove complicity or conspiracy as far as the whole case in general? I don't think so. I just don't think it's as cut and dry. And honestly, why do we even have him up there? We all know about the text chain, and I'm really hoping that the defense brings Proctor on because God knows he was so fun in the first one. Okay, so the next one is Officer Kelly Deaver. Okay, you know the Boston accent. Deaver, and I can't say a whole lot about accents, but Deaver can be construed as diva. So when they use saw, like I saw that cat, they would say saw. And a lot of people gave Jim McCabe a bunch of flack about that, but that's the dialect there. That's what they say. It's also in South Carolina, a lot of people say that, but I digress again. Okay, so there's been some mispronunciations, and then of course social media has had a field day with it, that they would say Kelly Diva, Officer Kelly Diva, which she corrects that. This testimony, y'all, She was so hostile. And this is the stuff I live for in courtrooms. So she was so hostile. She did not want to be there. It was obvious. And she was doing everything she could to not give the defense anything. Well, the defense is the one that called her, and they asked her about some testimony that she had given. It sounded like she really inserted herself into this testimony because she claimed the night that this happened, her supervisor told her to go and work dispatch so that he could go to the scene. So she was working dispatch. And of course, when you work dispatch, you're going to see cameras all over the place, screens. You're going to be able to see everything. And she claimed to not be able to see the camera footage from the Sally Port. Okay. She claims she didn't know where it was. But by testifying or bringing attention to herself in the first trial, no, not the first trial, but to another agency investigating the case, which we later found out was FBI. What difference does it make? But she inserted that she saw Higgins and Proctor in the Sally Port for a long time alone. Well, they kept pressuring her about where was the camera or the screen that she saw that. And she kept hemming and hawing, saying she knew there were security cameras, but she didn't know exactly where they were. So she just wasn't going to give an inch. Defense says, "You don't want to be here, do you?" She says, "I don't know why I'm here." And he said, "Did you give false testimony to whoever was investigating the case?" And she said, "I didn't at the time, but I did testify. I did tell that, but at the time, I thought that was correct. I represented that in good faith, but having been presented with the timeline, I realized that couldn't possibly have happened, so I immediately rescinded it." She said she went to her boss. She said she went to the FBI, and she told them, and that was the first time I think it was actually mentioned about FBI with her, so that was a little tidbit. And then she said she immediately corrected and was assured that because she did it in good faith and not because she was trying to do anything offensive or illegal or whatever, that they said there would be no repercussions. However, the defense did get her to say that she had gone in with the police chief in his office and talked. She said not about the case, but that he had told her that do whatever she needed to do and that he would support her. Well, she was a rookie cop, so defense pointed out, how many rookie cops do you think would ever be called into police chief's office unless there was some concern about what was going to happen? So anyway, I thought that made a really good argument. But then she said that the defense attorney, I can't think of his name. I looked that up really quick. Hold on, defense Dave Jackson. She got out really quick. I mean, it was like, boom, she said it really fast, that he kept pushing the perjury, that she had perjured herself. And she got out really quick that he had threatened her he had threatened to have her charged. That's not what he said. She blurted out that Jackson, the defense attorney, threatened to charge her with perjury if she did not get up and say what she said the first time. Well, everything went nuts. And then she did get to testify to that, which opened the door, and the prosecution was able to go back and discuss that, so to speak, with her. But it really did make the defense look really bad. But the defense came back up, and he said, "Did I ever tell you that I was going to prosecute you?" And she said yes. And he said, "Well, do you know who makes the charges? Who does the charging? Do you know who charges? Do you know who makes the charges?" And she hemmed and hawed about it. And he said, "The prosecution is the only one that can make a charge." She said, "But you could suggest it and you could request it." So it didn't look good for the defense. Okay, then here comes Dr. Marie Russell. I have to testify. I think she's testified before, but God knows it's just run into, she was like on the stand for like 3.5 days. And I think that was last week, and it rested last Friday, but I think she was brought back in. Anyway, she goes through that whole thing about the dog bite, and the dog bite. She is an advocate supporter of John being, I don't want to say mauled because it wasn't bit, but some tearing of the skin, but it looked like a dog. But that doesn't explain how the living daylights could have been beat out of his face. That dog's not going to do that. He's going to chew. So anyway, it went on. And I've said before about this witness, she is very highly educated, and she is definitely an expert, but she is trying now to become an expert in dog bites. And God knows, I know she has seen her share of dog bites. But you know, just because you've seen a lot doesn't make you an expert in it. There's certain stuff that's going to happen before you can claim to be an expert in that thing, particularly an expert in a particular aspect. Just like firefighters and police officers who come up, let's not say police officers because they could, just like firefighters when they come up to a scene, they've seen tons of wrecks, but they're not reconstructionists. So they are not accident reconstructionists. So anyway, okay, so what was important, that the prosecution got up and said that there was no dog DNA found his shirt or John O'Keefe, I think, but definitely his shirt and his jacket and stuff. And she said no. And I'm going to tell you why there was no dog's DNA. Because it was a pig's DNA. Anyway, why a pig? Inquiring minds want to know. So you know what happens the next day, start of court day, jury's not in the presence, they're back in the jury room. Defense goes nuts, and he wants a mistrial. He wants this thing thrown out because prosecution never mentioned the DNA on their side, you know, like when they did their case. And they're saying that he brought up evidence that had not been brought up before. You can't do that. And he just went nuts. Judge Bev came back and denied the motion and said that the prosecution could discuss the absence of dog DNA. Well, when I talk about the defense attorneys being upset, requesting a mistrial is like cotton. The defense came in with a hammer. They wanted that mistrial denied, says Judge Bev. Then, of course, we go back to Dr. Russell's cross-examination, and the prosecution challenged again about the dog bite evidence, but she maintained her stance, saying that his injuries were evidence of a dog bite. I'm just perplexed over this because let's just say that the evidence points to a dog scratching him, and they say they're not deep puncture wounds, but let's just say that the dog has clawed, and let's just say that it looks like there's some sort of attack. The problem here is the other injuries. The arm, yes, there's contention about the dog bite versus the tail light. I get that part. But how do you explain the rest of his injuries? And that's what I don't know. I still would like to know what the prosecution says the injuries on his face came from. I do know they say that the spoiler on the back of the car hit him, but I need more evidence to show where that could possibly come from. Okay, while she is very much an expert witness, it was time for her to move on. Okay, just time for her to move on. I felt like we were asking, you know, when you get asked a bunch of questions over and they're the same questions, but they're asked different ways. When they're asked different ways to see if you change your story, I kind of felt like that's what we were doing. Then we get into some of the testimony that I love. There is a Sergeant Nicholas Barros, B-A-R-R-O-S. He testifies. He is a police sergeant with Dighton Police Department. Now, Dighton is where Karen Reed's parents live, and that is where her SUV was that morning. So Canton Police went to get it because they have a warrant to get it. Obviously, it's a big part of this trial, so they had to go get it. So as a courtesy, they contact Dighton Police Department and ask for an assist, which usually means that the police department will go to the house because they're the ones with jurisdiction, but acting in concert with the agency that needs to produce the warrant and get the evidence. So that happened, and he was there. He testified for the defense, saying that the taillight only had a small portion missing when it left the house and was put up on the record. But the photos at the police station showed a big piece missing. My first thought too was, could it have been knocked off when it hit when it hit John? Could it have been knocked off in the transport of it? You know, there's a lot of jostling and stuff around. Or could it have been taken off at the police station? I don't know. But this officer, the Sergeant Barrows, whatever, led credence to the conspiracy theory. Okay. So anyway, thought it was really interesting because truthfully, you know, his testimony, I think, would be believable. But then, you know, you go back to, you have to prove that this was a conspiracy. And then, you know, you think the thin blue line, they hold that line. My next thought was, is there some issues? Are there issues between Dighton and Canton? And so one wants to do, you know, like damage the other one. I don't know. I get where his testimony was important to the defense, but I do have to wonder about that taillight. I do think that's interesting because they have pictures of it being loaded onto the record. And the angle from which that photo was taken, it does appear that most of that taillight was there. So my 13th jury's out on that one. Okay, so now the defense definitely gains some ground when they have the snowplow driver. His name is Brian Lucky Loughran. I think it's Loughran, but I think they pronounced it Loughran. This is your normal testimony, not your expert testimony. And this is where I love, because this is, you know, normal people talking about normal things that make normal jurors take notice. The expert stuff can get convoluted. So anyway, I love this part. So he says that he made multiple passes in that area. The Fairview Road, in particular, in front of Brian Albert's house, it was 34 Fairview Road, was on his route. And with it being on his route, he obviously passed it several times. He said he was very familiar with it. He knew the Albert family. And he said that when he went around one time that there was, or maybe multiple times, but when he went around, there was a Ford Edge parked in the line of where he's supposed to plow. Now, apparently there's a town thing that says when it snows, you have to get into the driveway. You can't, or you can get fined or get towed. Well, he opted not to follow protocol, and he did not call and ask for a tow for this vehicle. So he just plowed around it. This was news to me because where did this come into play? When he said it was in the middle of the night, like at 2:30, between 2:30 and 6. Now, when Karen, Jen, and what was the other girl's name? Kelly? I don't know, I'll think about it later. When they got to the home that morning, it was Jen McCabe's car, and they didn't mention anything about a car. But Karen saw John's body covered in a mound of snow. And apparently she knew immediately that it was John's body, which is something that I can't get out of my head. But where did that car come from? And even more so, if it was there, where did it go? There should be tracks if it was at that time of the morning that the plow driver saw it. But anyway, he challenges the prosecution's timeline in that John O'Keefe's body had been left in the snow from the time that Karen would have run over him to the time that he was found in the morning. All of that, okay, I can see where that would come into evidence. But what I can't really see is, or don't understand, is how that car, that Ford Edge, that's just news to me. I don't understand. But anyway, when asked why he did not have the car towed, he said that he knew Brian Albert as well known in the community, and that he was the first responder, and that he afforded him common courtesy. Even the plow driver, even them, are they a conspiracy, or the conspiracy on which side? Who knows? But then we get Dr. Wolf again. Here we go again. The accident reconstructionist. I'm tired of hearing from him because it's the same thing. They're going back and forth. It's like he supports both sides. It's like he doesn't support either side. Then it's like he supports the defense. Move on. I'm tired of it. The defense appears to be building a case that challenges the prosecution's timeline. That's a big issue. That's the one. And then, providing alternative explanations for O'Keefe's injuries. And as the trial progresses, the jury's just going to have to make some very important and heavy decisions. But trial continues on Monday, so stay tuned. Now, let's get to that Sean Combs, little bitty Diddy. Oh, what a week it was. We start out with the former assistant, Mia, testifying. And she talks again about, first of all, she's testifying under the pseudonym Mia. But everybody's figured out who she is. She had 3 days of testimony, which I think it was Monday that she finished. And she alleges years of sexual assault. Maybe I should say she talks about years of being essayed and psychological abuse by Combs. And she describes being manipulated and brainwashed through her employment from 2009 to 2017. So that's 8 years. Defense fires back with text messages where she's very loving to him on those text messages, praises him, says wonderful things about him. And I get that. I would use that too. However, I keep going back to, battered woman syndrome. They go back because they're afraid. I don't know that this girl had to go back, but you don't know. I mean, this whole thing about Diddy is the coercion. So I don't know. Did he have something over on her? But either way, it was probably a video. And when she left him, maybe he threatened her and she had to come back. I don't know. Maybe she was coerced into doing those messages. Again, I don't know. But it could go to her state of mind. I just don't know how I feel about her. But I still have sympathy for for the accusers. I know that there's some that ruin it for everybody, but my sympathy goes with an accuser. Another moment that we live for. In the middle of trial, this woman stands up and yells at Diddy. Let me get this right. These MFers are laughing at you. She yells at him. Then she says, "You're laughing at a black man's legacy. Pull your gun out, ninja. I dare you." Let me repeat. These MFers are laughing at you. You're laughing at a black man's legacy. Pull your gun out, ninja. I dare you. Oh my God. I can't believe this. Where did this come from? Who is this woman? Nobody is explaining it. Where did this come from? And I'm sorry. Maybe it's my senior brain. Maybe it's my boomer thing coming out. I don't know what this means. I don't know what this means. What does it mean? I know what pull your gun out ninja means, but what black man's legacy? I don't understand. Help me understand. Who's laughing at it? Who's laughing at it? It sounds like she's telling Diddy he's laughing at it. He's laughing at who? I don't understand. I just don't get it. And then when she says, these MFers are laughing at you, okay, it goes back to, are you telling Diddy that somebody's laughing at him? Then are you telling Diddy he's laughing at a black man's legacy? Who are the ones that are laughing? And who are they laughing at? Please tell me. And how did you get in? Somebody this crazy they should have seen coming. Anyway, it was a needed relief from some heavy testimony. I thought this was so funny. Oh my gosh, who's laughing at who? I thought that was hysterical. Okay, so then we get to Eddie Garcia's testimony, and he is the security guard at the infamous hotel where Cassie got her beat down. He's testified that Combs paid him $100,000 to make the surveillance footage go away. And he said Combs promised to take care of him, and that was $100,000. But here's the deal, guys. It was supposed to be, Combs said it had to never show up again. It had to be the only copy, and it had to be removed from the cloud. When it's in the cloud, it's in the cloud. I don't think my boomer brain is wrong. It's in the cloud. And there are techno people that can easily go back and find this stuff, which we still don't know who leaked that tape, but obviously it was not the only one. There is some thoughts behind the fact, this is my dog scratching. There are thoughts that the police leaked it. Then there are thoughts that it was somebody trying to make some money. Maybe this guy. What I did think was funny was that he was paid $100,000, but the money was split between his boss, who got $50,000, and he and another security guard, which got $25,000 each. They should have held out for more. Because I don't think they're in trouble. I don't think they're in trouble for taking the money. What I do think is that was such a key piece of evidence that Diddy was crazy for offering. I mean, what I do think is that the security guard was crazy for taking an itty bitty money from little bitty Diddy. I think that was funny. And he's crazy. A lot more money could have been had. Okay, next. This guy he was good, and he went a long way. I felt like, Addie, stop. I think he went a long way in proving or supporting the prosecution. Okay, this guy, Ferguson, was the chief financial officer of the financial enterprise of, what is it? Let's see. I guess it's not Bad Boy Entertainment, but the whole conglomerate of Sean Combs. So everything, under the umbrella. So he was in charge of the financial, of all of that. Addie, stop it. He's like a cat. He's trying to knead his way into making a bed for himself. And the bed's already made. That's ridiculous. Anyway, yeah, I'm talking about you. Okay, so he testified that he saw evidence of financial payments between Combs and Cassie Ventura's father in the amount of a wire transfer in the amount of $20,000, which was in 2011, and it supports what Cassie's mom said about they had to pay Diddy money to keep Cassie's videos from being leaked. Can you imagine the audacity, the low down dirty of Combs, who is billionaire, trying to take what he sees as a drop in the bucket, what he'd drop on a dinner in one night, to Ventura's family, who that could have been their entire savings. He's scum. He's the scum of the earth. But anyway, so this chief financial officer really supported that. He also confirmed that Sean Combs had signatory authority. So this is the critical piece to the prosecution's charge of RICO, meaning that everything in the Combs empire under his enterprise, is it Sean Combs Enterprises? I don't know what it is, but anyways, his enterprise, he had control of. So nothing that happened below, nothing in all of these businesses that fell below could happen without him knowing about it. So that goes to RICO, racketeering. And you know that that's going to be used, can and will be used by the prosecution, saying that he was running a criminal enterprise. Ferguson stated that he didn't see any crimes of SA. He did not see crimes with violence, SA, coercion, or enlisting others to commit illicit or illegal acts. So that bolstered Combs there. But I think that the damage has been done. I'm going to tell you that I got a little confused on this next piece because there was a girl named Brianna Bongolan. I think it's Bongolan. I think that's how you say it. She was Cassie's friend, and she also was the drug dealer. Now, she was going to be called by the prosecution, but she already told them that she was going to invoke her Fifth Amendment. So she was given immunity. She said there was no way she was going to testify because she could be brought up on charges. And so in order to get her to testify, the prosecution offered her immunity. But she claimed that she was Cassie's friend and that one night she was at Cassie's place. I don't know if it was an apartment, but it was on 17th floor. Yes, it was an apartment. And that Combs came in, arrived unexpectedly. I don't know if he came through the door, had a key. I don't have a clue. But he came in and he was mad. He was banging on the door. And so she just tried to act casual. This is what she said. And she stepped out on the balcony. Well, he had words with Cassie. And then he went out on the balcony, 17th floor balcony. And he grabs her and he dangles her off the balcony. I think it was like picked her up and like her feet were dangling, her legs were dangling. I don't know. Put me on the side of the railing of a 17th floor balcony, and I'm done for. I'm going to have a heart attack right there. But then she said he pulled her back and he slammed her into some furniture. And he yelled at her. He held her over the balcony for about, she said, 10 to 15 seconds and repeatedly said over and over, "You know what the F you did. You know what the F you did." I don't know what the F she did. I don't think it's been told, but I do know that he caused her some injuries because he threw her into the furniture. A lot more injuries if you ask me. So if Cassie was my friend, I would just tell her, "Love you, Cassie, but bye, I'm gone. I'm out of this." So she said later that there was a lot of emotional impact on her, and she said that it left her traumatized and that gave her night terrors and ongoing emotional distress. I believe that. I'm having nightmares just thinking about it. That's the God's truth. I having nightmares about dangling over. Anyway, so then the woman attorney on the defense side, she's good, Nicole Westmoreland, she got up and she challenged Bonglin's credibility because she highlighted some inconsistencies, stating that her timeline was not correct. The date that she said this happened, the dangling over the balcony, the day she said this happened, it was proven that Combs was on the East Coast performing in New Jersey in a hotel under the name Frank Black. Apparently that's his alias when he travels. And they had receipts for it. They had like breakfast receipts or something. So I don't know, maybe they could get somebody to come in and testify, or somebody else could use his cards. I'm just offering alternate, scenarios, alternative scenarios. But I do think that it could easily be the timelines off, and I don't really hold a lot of weight to that. If you ask me, I scaled a building, a 30-story building, believe it or not, twice, and I did zip lining in Tennessee over a gorge. They both, all of it terrified me. I still did it, but it terrified me. And I'm to the point now where I don't think I could climb up a ladder 3 feet because of that experience, especially the last one in Tennessee over that gorge. I can't tell you the date that it happened. To save my life, I can't tell you the date that happened. But I can sure as biscuit tell you that it did happen. And so that's why I don't really worry about that timeline. I believe her that he did that. I believe her. I just don't care. I don't give a cow's behind when the date was. I believe it happened. And if it happened, shame on you, Diddy. Go to prison. Okay, so then, I've already talked about that. Okay, Bonglin has filed a lawsuit, a civil lawsuit, which is completely separate, against Combs, and she's seeking $10 million in damages related to that incident. And I know she's going to claim some physical injuries, but more so the emotional ones. And you know what? She deserves $20 million for that. But I do believe that if you're going to go into a civil lawsuit, you need to firm up some stuff, because what you say in a criminal lawsuit or a criminal trial can be brought up, like your testimony can be brought up in a civil case. So she needs to get that together, and she needs to get a good lawyer for that. But she's saying she has nightmares. I'm with you on that, Brianna. I'm with you. I'm having them with you. Okay, so now we have Jane is victim number 2, and that is a pseudonym, Jane Doe. She testified to almost the exact thing. It mirrored Cassie's testimony. She testified almost to the same thing. She did not call it freak-offs, though. She called it hotel nights. And she went into great detail, which I won't go into that much detail here. You can go back and look at testimony. To sex encounters, male escorts, excessive use of baby oil. I think I heard before that he wanted them to glisten. This is one sick individual. Anyway, she said that the first time they did it, they were in a relationship. She thought it was all hunky-dory, no problems, like a regular exclusive relationship. But then they went to a hotel, and he asked her about would she have sex with another man while he watched. And she says she got a little into this, and he said he had somebody in mind. Well, apparently he already had this person on standby, but she did it thinking it was a one-time, kind of weird thing that they did, but it was done, it's over with. But that started it. She called it Pandora's box and said that once she opened it, it couldn't be closed. And there were a lot of text messages back and forth where she was saying she wanted it to go back to being what it used to be, that loving relationship, that person that she knew, but it never did. And she said that she was coerced into these sexual encounters. 1, because she loved him. 2, because of videos and financial control. He paid her rent, which was $10,000 a month. God, where? I guess California. $10,000 a month, you'd have a mansion. Anyway, he paid her rent. She was a single mother, and she was supporting her kids, which I think probably was messing with her head a little bit too, because you could tell that she was emotionally messed up with this, but that she testified that she felt like the money and his control over the money with her was tying him to her, and she didn't know how to get out of it. But that's coercion, right? that's the whole thing about coercion and this syndrome that women, well, I guess it doesn't have to be battered women's, and it doesn't have to be physical abuse. It can be mental abuse. And he's, these witnesses have that in spades. So emotional impact, she felt like she was entrapped. She had so much regret that she stayed into a toxic and exploitive relationship. But her testimony really laid the foundation for the prosecution, saying there were patterns of coercion and abuse, including Cassie, her, Mia, and Brianna. So all of that in totality was something that was proving some of the big cases, okay? And then, Holy Mary, Mother of the baby Jesus, did we get, in the words of my hero, Nancy Grace, bombshell tonight. Sorry, you can hear my dog now. He's just not going to behave. Okay, so apparently the judge noticed that Sean Combs was looking over at the jury and nodding, what did he call it, vigorously at jurors. Now, some reports were saying that it appeared to be coercion, tampering, whatever you want to say. But then other reports say that when testimony happened, that he was like, see, or yeah, that's right, like driving point home, he was looking at him and he was doing this. And who knows, maybe he's found a juror or two that he feels like is on his side, and all he needs is one, just one. And that's a hung jury, but at best for him, no, let's say not at best, at worst for him, a hung jury. At best, it's being acquitted, but she's never going to be acquitted of all this. I don't care what happens. So the judge, Aaron Subramanian, I think it's his name. Okay. So anyway, he said that he was not going to accept this behavior. He had seen it multiple times in the courtroom. He told the defense team that he would remove Diddy, little bitty Diddy, is going to be taken out of the courtroom if he did not stop it. I don't believe he can stop it. I don't believe the man. He is so full of himself. I believe we're going to see more of this. But Lord, this was the kind of courtroom drama that I live for. That was a good one. Coming completely out of left field. Nobody saw this coming, including the prosecution and the defense. They were talking about something, and right in the middle of it, the judge just immediately goes to this. Holy crap. So before we finish up, I want to talk about the big three charges that Diddy has been charged with. So RICO, which is racketeering, and conspiracy. So what has to be done there is it has to be shown that it was a criminal enterprise and that he controlled everything, and everything that happened, all of these entities underneath him, he knew about everything, and that there was crime being committed. Okay, so prosecutors allege that he led a criminal enterprise, let me check my notes, referred to as the Combs Enterprise, which included his business entities such as Bad Boy Entertainment and all of the various employees and associates. Remember, I'm going to go back to the financial officer, the chief financial officer. Signature authority, meaning Combs Enterprise, everything below it, Combs had control over it, knew about it, and had people underneath him or some of those entities, those businesses committing criminal acts. You remember, like his bodyguards, his staff, they would go get drugs. They would go, remember we were talking about earlier the bombing of Kid Cudi's, the ridiculous attempt at bombing. I say that, I should be ashamed of myself. Anyway, all of that. He had his little minions go and do these criminal acts for him. So that is racketeering. I really believe that you can say this happened. He engaged in all kinds of activities: sex trafficking, forced labor, kidnapping, arson, bribery, and the obstruction of justice, all aimed at facilitating his alleged abuse and exploitation of women over a period of a decade or more. So I think we've got that hands down. I think if you don't want to say anything else, if you don't want to give anybody else credence, you got to give it to Cassie. So you got that. So then, sex trafficking by force, fraud, or coercion. I'm going to go again. You got victim 2 and Cassie. But I really, Cassie, even if you take this one witness And I believe there will be another witness. I don't know that, but I believe there will be. So if you just take Cassie's, you've got that imprisonment. He won't let her leave. Remember how he dragged her back into the room, wouldn't let her leave. And there were multiple instances that she testified to that. Hiring sex workers, I think a lot of them were prostitutes, but also some were some were males. I don't know if there were females, probably. But bringing adult film actors into the mix and brought them across state lines. I don't think we can doubt that. I really think they've got that too. So now you've got trafficking. Also the drugs. You've got the drug situation, bringing in the drugs. You've got Bonglin admitting that she did it for them. So, yes, it was immunity, but she admitted it. I wouldn't have gone and testified either. Just remember, I'm still nervous for the jurors. Anyway, that they said that he used his influence, financial support, and threats to ensure compliance. And he recorded these things on video, oftentimes without the victims knowing about it, and then used it for coercion. They've got the tapes. And from what I understand, probably next week, they're going to play them for the jury. Now, everybody will probably have to clear the courtroom for that, except for the jurors and the defense and, people that have to be there, prosecution and all of that. So then you've got transportation for purposes of prostitution. Arranged for women and sex workers to travel across state lines to participate in the aforementioned freak-offs or hotel nights, as Jane Doe said. And, that goes to a broader pattern of his exploitation and abuse facilitated by him and his associates. Now, there are other charges, and they are very important. However, the top three we already talked about, that I just talked about, those are the ones that's going to put him away for, if not his whole life, a huge portion of it. So you've got use of drugs and coercion. I don't think I think that's a given. He's done for on that one. And it came down to he used drugs to maintain dominance, but also make them participate. And by their own admission, they took it because they couldn't deal with it otherwise. So he knew he couldn't get them, or he didn't have as much of a chance of getting them to participate as he did if they used drugs. So he gave them. And when I say drugs, there are so many drugs that was brought into this testimony over these days that I can't even keep account. I can't keep account of them. You name it, it was a pharmacy. Every drug you could possibly imagine was brought into play. Physical abuse, we saw that on the tape. Cassie was beat the crap out of. We saw that. So requiring extended recovery periods. You've heard about all the doctor visits and stuff that Cassie had. And I keep using Cassie. The other ones are going to talk about it. The other ones have talked a lot about the mental, emotional, drug, and finance. But I think Cassie's story just resonated with all of us so much, and definitely with me. Obstruction and intimidation. The prosecution accuses Combs of employing his staff to prevent victims from leaving, tracking down those who did and those who attempted to escape, bribes, threats to silence potential witnesses. That's big, guys. Witness tampering, that's big. So if you ask me, my opinion, which you didn't, but I'm going to give it to you, and if you're watching this, you probably want to know, I think he's toast. I think he's got a long prison term in his future. But I will be waiting for the defense. I always try, but right now I will say the key to his dungeon is in the prosecution's hands, and he's turning it in the lock. I think he's done for. But I am curious, what do you think? I do know we're waiting for the defense case. Can't wait for that. I expect that to be kind of explosive too. But I'm curious, what do you think? Drop me a line. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you like it. And also just let me know what you think. I'm curious to see if you believe that he's fried up like ham and gravy. I'm wanting to know if you disagree with me too. So in the meantime, you are free to step off the witness stand. I'm Beverly, and I'm on the witness stand.